November is Scorpio, also known as the sign of the serpent. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. We have a guest with us, backed by popular demand, in studio, Mr. Clint Beckham, who, that's right, everybody loved him from the last time he was here, so we got him back because we fucking loved him too. So
awesome.
Hell yeah, man.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to talk to you, yeah. And as always, we are joined by the Watcher, Mr. Brett England, the longhead deep in a new place in outer space. How are you doing, buddy? What's going on?
Yeah, man, new space neighborhood, new space station, but happy to be here, as always.
Right. Yeah. You ready to pull up some pictures of arrowheads? Because that's what you're going to have to do, yeah. Every time you hear an arrowhead name, find a picture.
Yeah, that took me a while last time. Man.
Yeah.
It's been a good while looking all those up.
Yeah, so do your job, Watcher. You did a great job last time, though. But first, before we get into the interview with Mr. Beckham, we have space weather news. The next geomagnetic storm. Geomagnetic storms G1 class are likely on November 30th or December 1st when a stream of solar wind is expected to hit Earth's magnetic field. The gaseous material is flowing from a large hole in the sun's atmosphere. This is a long-lasting hole that has lashed Earth with solar wind once a month since July. The last time it happened on November 4th, auroras were sighted in multiple northern tier U.S. states. Space weather news.
I thought there was like a lack of sunspots right now.
Yeah, it's just a hole in the atmosphere. It's not a sunspot.
Oh, it's in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Okay.
It says a large hole in the sun's atmosphere.
Man, so it's going to get even colder?
Yeah, right.
Damn it.
Global cooling because of a lack of sunspots. It's a solar minimum, so
Yeah.
that means there's like very little sun activity, which means there's less solar wind, which means more cosmic rays, which means more giant storms and colder weather and volcanoes, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
That's why everything is exploding and freezing at the same time. All right, so the first thing I wanted to ask you, and this is a
Wait a minute.
whoa. Oh yeah, gotta get ready.
Cheers, bro.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming back to the studio.
Oh yeah.
for having me
Cheers. So, I meant to do this last time and I totally forgot. And of course, this question is very broad-based, so just say what you know. But basically, what do you know from starting from like Paleo period up till till present day? What are the movements of tribes in Texas and stuff like that? Like you can, whatever you know about that.
Well,
like, were there Clovis people here?
Oh, sure.
Oh, okay, there were.
Absolutely.
So they were like nationwide, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There were really no tribes back then,
Oh, okay.
It's not like the John Wayne days, the Comanche and Apache. Sure, those guys were here.
Yeah.
But they were the last guys.
Right.
And I've always been taught or acknowledged that, like your Montel people, we call them Montel people, or your Clovis people, your Paleo, that
Folsom, stuff like that.
Folsom, that all goes with the Paleo goes with the Clovis and the Plainview, St. Mary's Halls, etc.
Yeah. So they're not really identified by people, but more by artifacts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we don't actually know who they were really.
Yeah.
What their movements were like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we know they traveled.
Yeah.
Most camps that you dig, if you do find Paleo artifacts, then there can be a lot. Yeah. But most of them are very few. They're not very occupied.
Okay.
So
they're a lot more rare.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we have found Clovis points and plain views and stuff like that at a higher level digging a camp.
Yeah.
To where maybe the Montel people picked that Clovis up.
Right, okay, yeah.
And said, hey, this is a cool point. I'm just going to keep it.
Keep it.
Yeah, instead of having to work and
it's from the ancients, like they must have thought, Okay, so all right. So what about this is another thing that I can never get straight in my head. What are the periods like? We have Paleo, and then what comes after that? And
Well, you've got your prehistoric period.
yeah.
Which is your bird points, and your last guy's 1,500.
Okay.
500 to 2,000 years.
Okay.
And then you've got your archaic.
Right. And they call that like late, middle, and early.
Right. Late, middle, and early. I think I
Archaic.
said that wrong. Yeah, no, it's archaic and then late archaic or early archaic.
Yeah. Are we going from now till backwards?
Yeah.
Okay.
from
So
now
yeah,
till
late archaic, middle archaic, early archaic, and then what's
Right.
before that? That's Paleo or
No, then you get into your transitional.
okay.
If I remember correctly, transitional paleo, and then you got your paleo.
Okay. All right. And then Paleo is like 12,000, between 10 and 12,000. Yeah.
Between 10 and they're claiming 15.
Right. Okay.
Thousand.
So
Yeah.
so the tribe names and stuff that we know of now are all like the latest period.
And what's the latest period called? Just prehistoric or
Prehistoric is what they call it.
okay.
in
So you got
archaeology.
prehistoric and then archaic and then Paleo, basically.
Right.
Okay.
So we
Yeah.
found we had some family in town and they found a Frio, like a piece of a Frio base. So it was like
That's pretty much right at prehistoric and archaic.
so it wouldn't
so
be, you
Frio.
couldn't really attribute that to a tribe or whatever.
No, not
necessarily.
really.
Yeah.
So it's like late archaic into prehistoric. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's and a lot of people don't realize, but a lot of the arrow points from the Comanche are metal. I don't know
Oh,
if
like iron. Yeah. That's right.
I don't, or iron or copper or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned that.
No, you didn't.
podcast,
Yeah, but I do remember seeing that. Yeah, that there were metal arrowheads. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the John Wayne days where
Right. They had guns too. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. One of our Ty was showing. Ty. He sent us this picture. It was like shows all these archers, with the longbows, and it's like archery. From how far away can you stab someone? Right. That's basically what it's about. Make a knife, put it on a stick, and shoot it with a string. Stab somebody from really far away. So
It's really interesting though. I never realized that all those tribe names and everything are that recent.
yeah, they're recent. Yeah. So okay, so who were the guys that were here recently that we have the names for?
Apache, Comanche,
And they were like here, or just in Texas in general? Okay.
Yeah, they were here. Down on the coast, you have the Karankawa.
Karankawa. Oh, okay.
Up in northeast Texas and east Texas, starting central Texas up into Louisiana, Oklahoma, all up in there. You have the Caddo.
Caddo
Indians.
cultures.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was so the last time you were saying that the Caddo people were starting to get into the mound builder people.
Right.
Okay.
They're the mound builders and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So. And then you get into Oklahoma, you've got the Choctaw, the Cherokee.
Yeah.
There were some Cherokee down here, but I mean, mostly
Yeah.
up north.
And how far west did the Apache or Comanche go, or are they just in Texas?
Oh gosh, they went all over into New Mexico, Arizona,
Oh, okay. So
California, I'm sure.
wide ranging. And they mostly made, like before they had metal, they were making just the little bird points, and then later on they were making metal points, and then they had guns.
Right.
Okay.
But the knives and stuff were throughout, right? I mean, like they weren't specific bases or whatever, but they were all making knives and scrapers
sure.
and everything.
Sure. They were doing that, and a lot of times, I'm sure they had metal knives as well.
Oh yeah.
But as time progressed, they were like, hey, you know what? Why work on this rock?
Yeah.
We got metal. Let's just
Yeah.
stab it in
Yeah. Exactly.
a deer horn and wrap some sinew around it and,
Yeah.
scalp a white man. A lot easier. Save our
Yeah.
time and labor.
Yeah. Doesn't break as often as the rock.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So okay. So the it's interesting because like I've always wondered about the name differences because they have the same sort of like we have the late, middle, and early archaic, and there's also what's it called? The lithic, Neolithic, Mesolithic, and Paleolithic, right? So the paleo that we're talking about with the arrowheads connects to the Paleolithic cultures of like of Europe and what they talk about the Stonehenge builders. Like we're talking about going way back. The paleo, it means like early. stone, right? Meso is middle stone, and then Neo is late stone.
New stone.
Yeah, or new stone, yeah. So it's the same thing, except there's sort of I think it's a finer division in the U.S. or maybe in the Americas just because of how many arrowhead artifact types there are here, maybe.
Right.
So I was just thinking about that.
Well, you know, the Paleo Indians, and this is my thought, those guys were running around trying to survive and trying not to get eaten.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think those guys were, you know,
exactly. I mean, when you have like the American Pleistocene lion and beavers the size of Volkswagens, and
Right.
I mean, I mean, you told that story about the beaver like doing the sit up and hissing at you. Can you imagine one that weighed 600 pounds?
Exactly.
He'd be sending you to the other
I
side.
just want to know what kind of dams did they build?
Yeah, exactly.
Your whole tribe gets flooded out. That dang beaver.
Single beaver just built the Hoover Dam up there.
Have y'all seen the movie Alpha? Yeah.
Alpha. No, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah?
It came out back in September or August, I believe, but I finally got to check it out, and it's about Paleo Indians.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, you need to check it out. But there's, with that being said, they were hunting bison, and but it was the larger bison.
The bison bulls, the huge ones,
Yeah, and talking about getting eaten. I mean, they're all sitting around the campfire, and you know they're on this hunt, and all of a sudden this saber tooth
Oh, yeah.
comes down, snatches his buddy here, and he's like, "Whoa!" And the dad's like, "Well, he's gone." He's like, "Yeah, he's gone."
And we're not chasing that thing.
Yeah, exactly. But great storyline. Y'all need to check that movie out.
Okay, I'll check it out. So it came out this year. It's recent? Oh, okay, yeah. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, I never even heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, wolves are involved, and
The dire wolves, the huge ones.
Yeah. And this kid, he gets lost from the tribe, and they're on a hunt. And long story short, I won't spoil the movie.
Yeah. Spoiler alerts.
Yeah. So check it out, Alpha.
But it happened 12,000 years ago, so we all know how it ends.
Right. Exactly.
So another thing I was going to ask you was about
I cannot.
are the paleo arrowhead? I always want to try to sort of categorize this in my mind. Like you talked about oblique and what's it, parallel napping. So what does that mean? What does it look like?
Basically, they did it at a side angle, you know, from left to right.
Okay.
And it's just the parallel flaking is
Just
usually
to the edge?
Yeah, to the edge.
Okay.
And it's from the middle to the edge, and middle to the edge on both sides, you know.
Right.
So
That's the parallel.
right.
And then the oblique, so the St. Mary Hall were the ones that had the oblique that just went all the way across it?
Right, at an angle.
At an angle to the line of the point.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure because I saw the pictures he found the pictures of these St. Mary's Hall, these long paleo points, and they had these perfect, going across, angled all the way across, all the way down.
So beautiful.
It's just amazing. And it's so I think that's what he's talking about with the oblique napping versus the parallel napping, which is like they're going down the edge. Okay. Right. So is there a way, if you see one that's fluted, does that mean it's paleo usually?
Usually, yes.
Okay.
Now, your Pertinalis points, they have a little flute there, you know, but that's, it's not considered a flute.
Okay.
It's more or less a...
Do they also have the base or the tang thing, or are they just a flute?
but they have little ears at the bottom of the Pertinalis.
Okay,
know?
so there are little ears.
Right. You can turn them upside down, they look like a perfect wolf head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
cool.
That
With
is
the
cool.
little jowls, the
Oh, yeah. Man, that's cool.
ears. It's pretty cool. Yeah, you
It's cool.
take Pertinalis point, turn it upside down, it looks like a wolf head to me.
Wow, that's really badass.
It's not a rocket.
Yeah.
It's not a rocket.
Not a rocket, no. Chad Mendez, I'll never forget you for that one.
I love that story too. Yeah. It doesn't matter, bro. Even when the Indians painted them, they still look like rockets to people who don't know arrowheads.
Exactly.
Because we saw them on the, and the paintings were like, it's a rocket.
Yep.
Yeah. So I had another question. Do you have any questions? I want to think of this one real quick.
Yeah. I want to know about the video shoot you did with in October.
Oh, with Silent Chicago?
Yeah. How'd that go? Did they pay for your?
Yeah. They paid it, and I made money off the deal, and And they come in. We had a great videographer.
Yeah.
And this dude had his drone and all kinds of stuff, man. It was cool.
Oh, okay.
We got some great
Getting
footage.
aerial shots and stuff?
Yeah, we didn't get it of they wouldn't let me do a kill shot.
Okay.
But they got us going in, and it was a piece of cake because I've done it so many times, and I was at 171 rams that I've guided.
Yeah.
And
like helped people get, basically?
Right, confirmed kills. So 172 happened to be mine, and we go out that first day, and the rain.
72.
Yeah, 72, year I was born.
All right.
So, we got rained in first morning, and we didn't go out till, I don't know, noon or something like that. And went out. It was, I'd done it so many times, I knew exactly what to do. We saw a herd of sheep. I knew which ram I wanted.
Yeah.
Versus trying to tell a client,
right,
it's that one, by the tree, by the big rock, or which rock, because they don't know the size.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a giant. He was a 29-inch ram. He was a good, respectable animal.
Yeah.
And 250 yards, and I told him, I said, let's go.
Yeah.
And threw it on off safety and whack.
Nice.
Shot him. And,
Did you get to see the finished video, or are they still working on it?
They're still working on it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're still working on it. And,
are they going to put it up somewhere, or is it going to be for advertisement for them?
I think it's going to be on YouTube.
Sweet. So
I use their rifle, their suppressor.
Yeah.
Real tree camo.
Oh,
Gave
yeah.
us a bunch of gear. It was
Nice.
cool. I got a new backpack out of the deal.
All
and
right.
some real tree camo and
awesome.
And it was a fun deal.
So make sure when you get the link to the video to send it to us, and we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
For those of you who didn't listen to the first episode that Clint was on, how did you get the gig? Like, what was the whole deal?
Because they brought Mendez out there, right?
Yeah. They brought UFC fighter Chad Mendez out and
then they were like, "Have you shot one yet?"
Yeah, and that was it. Yeah, they were like, "Have you shot an audit?" No, 6 years of doing this stuff, and I've never killed one. So, and then I kept in touch with Darren Jones with Silent Scope, great guy.
Yeah.
Ex-military.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So it was fun. It was real fun.
But you got rained out the first day?
Yeah, we got
at Skyline.
Yeah, we had like.
What was that like?
we had like 10 inches of rain.
Oh my god.
Gosh, in like 5 days.
Oh, that was
we had the rainiest September on record.
Yeah,
and
that's
right. Into October, it was still.
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
Still getting inundated.
We got 22 inches here that month. Yeah. So that's right. I forgot about that.
And the cool thing was out on Skyline, y'all both been out there, and you know how them canyons are.
Yeah.
Remember when Sonora got flooded?
Yeah.
Made national news, all that. Like 12 inches of rain in 4 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, what had happened was it didn't rain a drop at Comstock. So we had clients out there hunting, and the landowner called me, and he said, "Do not go to the river." And this was like 3 days after Sonora got flooded.
Okay.
And I was like, "Why is that?" He said, "There's a 22-foot wall of water coming down."
Oh my god.
And I'm like, "Whoa, that's cool." So
let's go down and check it out.
Yeah, so we went to the bluff there at the Bluff Road there, where we all go down, and he told me to hit about 3 o'clock. Well, I had Sig Sauer, the gun company, Sig Sauer guys out there, and Cabela's guys out there, and we had just killed a ram. Well, I was caping this one out, and about 3 o'clock, I couldn't see the river, but I was probably 400, 500, maybe 600 yards from it, around a bend, and I could hear that wall of water coming down.
Oh my god.
It was cool, man. I was like, "Oh man, why am I caping this ram out? I want to see that,
I want to see this. This tsunami.
So, the tsunami rolled through.
That's freaking awesome.
And you could hear it just roaring, and then it just kind of went on past like a jet, and it was pretty cool.
That is cool.
So.
And you think about that because you look at those canyons and you see the erosional patterns like way up high, and like how that must happen on enormous scales sometimes when there's like big disasters.
Oh, sure.
So in the past, there are walls of water coming down those canyons that are 100 feet high, 200 feet high.
Oh,
just
like no telling what those poor Indians, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's this one place that you took us where y'all had actually done a dig and you had buried it all. Mm-hmm. As we were driving there's like this 20-foot wall of where the dozer had just taken out the wall to build the road up there, and there's midden rock in layers, wavy layers, way down, you know, and you're just like, golly.
Yeah. So you know that
it just buried
it. Like
where
some
they had
enormous
lived.
flood came down and dumped all that sediment on top of that midden rock. Yeah.
Yeah,
Man.
and no telling how much got washed away. You know, I've seen it on a million camps. I tested one yesterday down on Mason Creek, and I think it's going to be a good camp. But I didn't have a skid steer. I just went in with a sharpshooter, and I found a sign.
Yeah.
No arrowheads, but it's.
I cannot do that.
I think it's been flooded. So I'm looking at probably 3 foot of sediment on top of it.
Yeah.
Before
Before you hit the occupation layers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What'd you call them? Subterranean little middens.
Yeah, subterranean.
Yeah.
Good memory.
Hey, I just listened to it again. I had to make sure I did my homework. I can't take credit for that.
So what are you're still working on Mason Creek?
Yeah, this guy is a really cool guy. He's an ex-vet, maybe still active, but he's building a ministry there.
Okay.
And it's going to be for. I think it's open to the public, but he's building a little church there, and he's going to do funerals, weddings.
Okay.
For vets or active whatever, you know. And he's looking to possibly, you know, hopefully there's an Indian camp there, and it'll help him build his church and all that stuff. It's right here in Bandera.
That's cool.
Rounded Night Ministries.
Rounded Night.
Yeah, Christian, really cool guy. I met his wife yesterday and his son, and met him a while back. He was working, so I went out and checked it out.
Yeah.
We'll see. And I've got a couple more things, surprises in the works. I won't say them out loud right now.
yeah, I know how that is.
I actually have a meeting tomorrow, you know.
All right.
And if I get this gig, it's going to be a 5-year gig.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be loaded.
Wow. That's fantastic.
So how did Mason Creek 4 end up? What you were working on last time?
It was great, and then all of a sudden it stopped.
Yeah.
And it was real sporadic. And, you know, I think I refunded like $1,400 one day by lunch because, I mean, we had found a few brokes here and there, but nothing just kind of like where y'all were digging was hot and on fire.
Yeah.
And then it went, and then, boom, it just stopped. Just like the camp just said, no more.
Yeah.
And there was sporadic stuff there, but so we covered it back up. It's not worth it to me as a commercial digger.
Right.
To be taking people's money.
Yeah.
And finding one arrowhead.
And no one found any pterodactyl claws?
No pterodactyl claws.
Still waiting for the pterodactyl claw.
I saw that lady the other day. Yeah. I wanted to ask how the pterodactyl claw hunting was going.
Hey man, you never know. I want to see something.
I know. I'm like, wait a minute.
know, right?
Let's see these pterodactyl claws because.
So when I first came to the hill country in '97, I was walking in the river bed, you know, just looking at the rocks because we moved from Georgia and
Which
it was
river
all.
bed?
Okay.
I don't know what it could have been any creek or river, whatever,
right.
dry creek bed. But you know, it was all granite and sandstone and red clay in Georgia. So when we got here, I saw these rocks I didn't recognize anything. You know, I'm walking through the river and I pick up this one that's about the size of my hand, like open hand, and it looks like a dinosaur foot, like 3 claws, and one of them's like kind of turned sideways a little bit, like it broke off, and it's laying sideways and it's embedded in this limestone. And I showed my buddy, you know, I was like 15. I was like, dude, check it out, I found this dinosaur foot.
Yes.
And he's like, that's just a freaking piece of limestone, dude. But I was all bummed out.
Yeah.
You know, because he lived here and I didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
I just found a dinosaur foot.
Yeah. So I showed my dad and I was like, yeah, he said it was just a piece of limestone. My dad's like, what the hell does he know?
All right.
So I kept it. And I kept it all these years, and this year, me and Russ went and met with this paleontologist guy, and I just brought it. And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's straight up a negative.
It's a natural.
It's a
natural mold.
A mold of the negative of a footprint of a theropod."
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
I was like, yeah.
The three-toed dinosaur makes a footprint in the mud, and then that fossilizes or hardens, and then there's another layer laid on top of it that fills in, the footprint, and then that's what he got was the natural mold.
Broke off. So it is a piece of limestone.
It is just a piece of limestone, but it is also a dinosaur foot.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He still has it.
And the guy was doing a presentation at the museum in town, and he actually used it in his presentation. And he had a skeleton, like a fake, skeletal mold of the foot, and he held it up, and it just
fit perfect.
Fit perfect, yeah.
I'd find that kid that told you it wasn't and chunk it. How's this for limestone?
No, we became good friends. He's a solid guy.
Yeah.
But he totally skirp derped me like hardcore.
Yeah. Just being a straight up skirptard. Yep.
We all have been there.
Yeah. So that was the whole meeting with the paleontologist was cool. That the Natural History Museum that got in Bandera. Mm-hmm. We had brought some of our fossil finds and crystal stuff, and a couple of Kyle brought some artifacts, and we just brought them down there because I was there one day and I was just really impressed with the museum. Like, you don't expect a small town museum to be. It's really high quality.
I haven't been there.
It's really fantastic. Yeah, and dude, you have to go because they have the actual. It's a piece of a femur bone of a mammoth that has tool marks in it that came from the site that is now archaeologists accept there were people here 22,000 years ago because there's tool marks on the bone.
Wow.
And the bone is fossilized.
It's
stone now.
It's so, and they have the bone or a piece of it in the museum, so they got it, and it's one of their pride. She was like, "This is one of our prized pieces," because it came from Texas and it changed the paradigm of archaeology in North America.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it has a clear cut, slice cut down into the bone that was then broken off, and you can see the clean cut where they broke it off to get it to the marrow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
So they had killed that thing. I mean, they wouldn't be getting to the marrow in some dried bone.
Right.
This was
they killed it,
and they were eating it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's cool.
So they have the bone in there. And you can also see just other marks on there, where they were scraping meat off of it or whatever. So it's a really high quality museum. And so I was impressed when I was there the first time. And I told him, I was like, hey, my brother and I we've worked all these different ranches doing various,
looking for pyramids.
Yeah, we're basically looking for pyramids, but we call it, working for the ranchers, cleaning up their stuff. But we're really looking for pyramids. But we end up finding all these fossils, and we do all these walks. So I was like, would you guys be interested in us bringing some of our artifacts? And the lady there told me, she was like, well, why don't you come and bring some when our directors are here on a weekend? So we piled our cars up with a bunch of stuff that we had, crystals and artifacts and bones, things we thought maybe because we didn't know. And we brought them, and they were impressed, and they were like, okay, so come again on this specific date when this guy is a paleontologist will be here, and he'll be able to tell you and us what these are. And that guy was awesome.
That's
stand down or die.
November is Scorpio, also known as the sign of the serpent. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
When our directors are here on a weekend, so we piled our cars up with a bunch of stuff that we had, crystals and artifacts and bones, things we thought maybe because we didn't know. And we brought them, and they were impressed, and they were like, okay, so come again on this specific date when this guy is a paleontologist will be here, and he'll be able to tell you and us what these are. And that guy was awesome.
That's cool.
And he's the one that told Kyle, like, yes, that is a actual dinosaur foot. It's a natural mold. And yes, that is a dinosaur bone. And so is that. And so is that. And those are teeth. And like all the stuff we thought. We were just like, thank you, God. This is awesome.
But we got to give credit where credit is due. It was the Watcher that's got it all started because he had the field trip with his.
That's
his
right.
family. Yeah.
That's right. I totally forgot about that. Yeah. He sent me a text one day. He was like, hey, I'm in Bandera going to the museum, and you're not very cool, but maybe you should come anyway. And I was like, okay, I'll come. and then I was really impressed. So that's how we ended up doing that. So that was cool. Yeah.
I'll have to go check it out. Funny story. Excuse me. When I was doing a dig. I wasn't actually doing the dig on the Skyline, the first one. That he's a commercial digger.
This is the one where he said you were going to kill people with the skid steer.
yeah, that guy. Yeah, that guy.
Get off that thing! You're about to kill somebody. You're like, man.
I don't think I told this story, but you're talking about the bone, the mammoth bone that had the marks in it. So there's a digger, and he opened the site Austin Diggers years ago.
Okay.
And he was probably the first internet.
Okay, so website.
Arrowhead, website guy. Hal Hopkins, great guy. He's a little kooky.
Yeah.
He always has his umbrella on a hat, you know.
Awesome.
I like him already.
And he's a prankster, you know, and he's got it. He brings his own screen, and it's got it set out into segments, you know, where he takes and all his rocks fall in one tray. And
oh wow,
yeah, I call him Mr. Gadget. You know, He's got an umbrella on his backpack that he sits over and screens. You know,
where does he get these wonderful toys?
But I love Hal to death. He's been to a lot of my digs, and I give him great rates, special prices, and he comes in and he'll test. He'll come in and test.
Yeah.
Hey, I want dirt from right here.
Right.
He's almost like an archaeologist, but
field archaeologist.
Yeah, field archaeologist. But
the man knows his dirt.
But he likes to play tricks. So I had a client from Tyler, and he was a first-time digger.
Okay.
And we're out there on the Skyline on that south end where y'all went down and found the footprints.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, on that camp there where everyone camped out by the swimming hole.
Yeah.
And this guy comes up to me, and I'm not running the dig. I'm just supervising it because it was our ranch, and Nacho's running the dig. And this guy comes up, and has something behind his back, and his eyes are about as big as the studio here, you know. And I'm like, "What's going on, Raphael?" And he like presents it to me like it's a gift.
Yeah.
And he's just in shock, and there's this huge bone with an arrowhead stuck in it.
Oh man.
You can see the back end of the arrowhead, and I'm like, holy crap. You know, so it got me too, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And Nacho is operating the Bobcat, and he drives by, and he looks at me, and I'm like, look, and he just keeps on driving. I was like, wait a minute. And I see Hal over there, Mr. Gadget.
Yeah.
He's in the corner just So this kid is first time digger, and he was ticked off.
I bet.
I mean, he was mad, and I was kind of mad because I fell for it too. You know what I mean? I'm like, what? You know?
Yeah.
A dinosaur bone with a Pertinalis point from 4,000 years ago. You know? And then I felt stupid. I was like, all right, I need to do a little more research here. But,
dude, I can totally see, like, you just grab it, you're like, oh my god, and then after a while the details start like, wait a minute, that's 4,000-year-old point. This is an actual dinosaur bone.
Yeah, I mean,
hey man,
maybe
come on,
maybe the stories are, wait a minute. Yeah, first look at the prankster, first do that. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll come back for the second segment of the first hour with Mr. Clint Beckham.
we're back. 3 serpents in the 10 by 10 by 10 serpent mound. High atop the Edwards Plateau. Got Clint Beckham in studio.
That's right.
And
definitely a snake bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more we talk to him, the more we are totally positive that he is a serpent.
So, I wanted to get into some of these controversial aspects of, what we all like doing, digging in trash piles.
Right. Right on.
So,
Trash hills.
yeah, trash hills. Yeah, basically. Indian midden mounds. And we have to be very careful of what we call them, because like when we talked about in the first episode, when you met your girlfriend, you told her, you're like, dig up Indian mounds. And she got all mad and she didn't talk to you.
Wouldn't even talk to you for 3 weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can we start over?
Yeah, so what are some of the, or what are the key distinctions there between like what we're looking for in terms of seeking artifacts and what can be found that might make the place a sacred site, quote unquote, or whatever?
Usually when you go up into the Caddoan culture,
Yeah.
up in the north and northeast of Texas anyways, and Louisiana, Oklahoma, those were the true mound builders. And in some of those you can find burials.
And these are the ones that were buried upright in a fetal position or whatever, facing east or something like that, or on their sides, fetal, something like
Yes,
that.
it varies.
Yeah.
But when you find, what do they call them? Stair-step burials, Lake Sam, Bob Sandlin. Lake Bob Sandlin, they found 13 burials, and they were stair-stepped.
Oh wow, like terraces or something.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
Yeah, like terraces, and they found all kinds of pots and Caddoan blades, big 13, 14-inch blades, 10-inch blades.
Wow.
That they were buried with them. So those were more important people,
Yeah.
Probably some higher.
Yeah, elites, basically elites of the
the
society.
elites, but
So were the bones? Do you know, like the skeletons? How were they tall? Were they? Because a lot of times you find that the elites were like they were large people, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Some of them were. Now you go to Murfreesboro, Arkansas. Right outside of Arkansas, Murfreesboro, they have it. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but there's a site that you can go to, and they have the replicas.
Oh.
Replicated. Archaeologists dug them up, and it's crazy. I mean, they buried buffalo skulls with them, and
Oh, wow.
And it's exact replicas of the bodies how they found them.
Right.
And they were in like little rooms,
Oh
So,
man.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So I remember, I think it was when we went to the mounds in Georgia or Alabama, wherever.
Yeah, Moundsville, Alabama.
Our mom used to take us on field trips. We were homeschooled. She would take us on these field trips, science field trips or whatever.
You have to say like we were homeschooled.
Yeah. And one of the areas that we were at had these big earthen mounds, and they had angled sides and flat tops. Anyway, I remember seeing a diagram of the burials inside, and they would bury, they bury all these people, and they would build these sort of vertical logs standing up, and then a bunch of horizontal logs crossed over, and then they would bury that in earth, and then they would go up the next layer and do it again and again and again. So the mound was actually it was a structure underneath of logs that covered the bodies.
Yeah.
Do you remember seeing that?
Yeah, I do. And I remember reading about it in Giants in North America.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of that they would diagram them out, and they'd show you how like there were these extremely deteriorated, especially in Mississippi where everything's wet. But the extremely deteriorated log structures, but the bodies were actually held in cavities because of that. They weren't just like encased in earth.
I think that they actually lived on top of them.
Yeah, that's what you said last time, that they would build huts.
Yeah, build huts, have a burial, and then...
So that's interesting because, like, modern day, or at least Western civilization, that's weird. Like, would you bury your family under your house? That would be strange, right? But a lot of the like especially in Europe, that I know there's a whole bunch of places that are considered like Paleolithic sites. Okay, so like I was just reading about this. There's a place called Skara Brae. It's on some remote island or whatever, and everything there was megalithic. They built it all. The island is just stone, and they dug everything out of stone. They just carved everything out of stone, chairs and everything. Must have been incredibly uncomfortable, unless they had pillows. Nobody knows now.
Right.
But they actually, and I don't know if it's specifically this site, but there are sites like this in Europe where they actually had burial. They would bury people beneath the floors of the houses, you know, and that's very strange to me. Like,
I think that's cool.
Yeah. I would assume that it would be like we were talking about last time too, sky burials, where they would sort of put them in a sort of remote area, a cairn that is open to the sky, so that they could be fed to the sky, right? And then they would eventually go and retrieve the bones and place them beneath the house.
So in the cathedrals and stuff, all of the saints or whatever are buried. You know, a lot of the
beneath the
priests
floor.
and whatever are buried under the floor or in the catacombs underneath. So it's still, you know, that's a surviving culture, I guess.
And that implies that there's something, because again, when you have the priests or the nobles, the elites of the society are the ones that get buried beneath the floor of the church, right? Everybody else is buried in the yard.
So what I'm saying is that this idea of the mound and the hut on top that people lived in could be interpreted as a priesthood, right? Like the whole thing was a priesthood. Like maybe they were the keepers of knowledge, and that was part of their
Or it could have been
preserving it,
like what Asian cultures do, which is ancestor worship, quote unquote. It's not really worship, but they do the same thing. Like every Japanese house has a little tiny shrine in it that have artifacts of their ancestors, and they will go and, like, the shrine has its own special place, and they go, you know, I don't know if they do it every day, but they have this little ritual where they go and they do a little prayer and they set some incense and they put it in there, and there's photographs of their ancestors, and, you know, it's not worship, but it's a sort of trying to maintain a spiritual connection to one's ancestral past. So I wondered if it was something like that. Like maybe they didn't live in the hut that was on top of the mound, but that was a place where people would go and sort of connect to the ancestors of the tribe, whatever.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea too, yeah.
You know, on those, on those cattle sites, if you find a burial, usually there's pottery associated.
Yeah.
Usually, water bottles. I know a lot of people that they probe for them, and usually if they find a complete pot, there is a burial related.
Okay.
Now there's supposedly a new law by the Historical Society saying anywhere where there's pottery, there's burials, you can't dig it up.
Okay.
That's, you know, they're trying to make it a law.
Okay.
But I have found pottery in Bandera, Texas.
Yeah.
I found it in Tarpley, Texas, you know, and no burials. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you get up into the northeast Texas and central Texas, there's a guy doing a site, it's right outside of Hutto. They found 35 mass burials.
Wow.
A burial of 35. And
okay, a mass burial with
35 people in it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, I said that wrong, but...
Got it. Yeah. 35 mass burials. Holy shit. Okay, got it.
And they're actually digging that site.
Okay.
They stumbled across them. And, you know, typically in that area, it's not normal.
Yeah.
But they're right on that Caddo.
Is it associated with the mound, or is it just in the ground, or?
Yeah, it was, and they were actually well preserved.
Wow.
You know, bones and all, but it's all the pH level of the soil.
Right.
Because...
Yeah. I've read a lot of stories where as soon as the bones are exposed, they just turn into nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I found a canine skull one time here in Bandera digging.
Yeah.
And it was perfect in the sidewall when I was digging around. And I got it out, and as soon as I got it out, the air hit it. It just crumbled.
Wow. See, I've read that so many times. It's so hard. It's
man,
like,
I wanted to skirp derp that so hard. But now somebody
has actually done it. It's like you see this all the time, like, oh yeah, they found this giant skull, and it just turned to dust as soon as you're like, really?
But you get up in that part of the world, and a lot of stuff is pretty well preserved.
Yeah.
You know? So I found them up there in Northeast Texas, and I just leave them alone.
Yeah. Bad juju.
Yeah, bad juju, guys.
So what do you call what was the phrase for looking for the pottery or for checking for pottery?
Oh, probing.
Probing. How does
Probing.
that work?
It's like I've got a buddy, and he's really good at. He has like over 250 complete pots.
Wow.
And he's up right on the Louisiana border, Texas-Louisiana border, and he has it looks like a car antenna.
Okay.
A little more solid though in it. It's got a little ball on the end of it.
Okay.
That he soldered onto it, and he pokes it in the ground, and he'll feel them. He can tell you if that pot's broken.
Oh my God.
Or he can tell you if that pot's just a shard, or he can tell you if he hits an arrowhead.
That sounds like a
Just
version.
based on the way the steel feels when he whatever
Yeah,
he hits.
so he just
It's like limestone, flint, pottery.
Yeah,
Sounds like a version of dowsing almost.
So what kind of soil are we talking about here?
It's sandy soil up
Sandy,
there.
okay.
Up there where we did that dig up on the White Oak Creek there in Northeast Texas. It's really sandy soil, and you just poke along and man, you can feel it.
Wow.
And it may be a foot deep, or it may be 8 foot deep.
This is like the poor man's GPR, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
So down in Hondo,
Down or die.
where it's sandy soil, it's so hard,
Packed.
Yeah.
packed tight. I mean, you can't even hardly drive a tent stake into it.
Yeah, it's
It's got a little bit of clay mixed into
clay,
it.
Yeah, that's what you say. But that stuff up there, I mean, okay, here's a pot here, and he'll dig it up.
Oh man.
That's
They're trying to make this illegal?
Historical Society
Yeah.
is trying to.
I thought they were about to legalize pot, man.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Sorry, I just had to get that.
pretty good.
Bad dad joke
That's
out
pretty
there.
good.
Right.
So I have a friend who, she has an artifact that I think it was her father or her grandfather dug it up in a mound somewhere in Texas, I think. But it was classified, I guess, as a toy, like a children's toy, and it's a little turtle, but it has a rattle in it, like a rattlesnake
Is it
rattle.
wooden?
Or is it a turtle shell?
Maybe it is a turtle shell. I can't remember what it is. I just know it's like
Stand down or die.
man. the image in my mind is that it's actually a turtle. It's like made to look like a turtle. I don't know what the material is. I can't remember if it was pottery or what,
Ivory or wood?
but
or
it's got this rattler in it, like from a rattlesnake, and so when you shake it, it just.
wow.
But he dug it up in a mound somewhere.
Wow. That's probably that you can find stone pipes and
Yeah.
effigies of little faces and all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
you find down on Amazon and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can find that up in the Caddo culture. Did a lot of that. Now,
And where does that start? Like, where does the Caddo?
I would say about just a little north of Austin, headed north.
Goes into Oklahoma and Louisiana, he said.
Yeah,
in the
Oklahoma.
east and north.
Goes east, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Ohio. This is a bunch
Ohio.
of, all the mount. And that's kind of like we tell ourselves that everybody who built mounds was the same culture, but we don't really know that. It's
I mean that you've got your Choctaw; those were mound builders.
Yeah.
You got your Caddo, and then whatever else is all up there.
yeah. So this is probably this is a little bit outside the topic specifically of natives or arrowheads, but we did a lot of looking into ancient American giants, like people finding gigantic skeletons, not like cyclopses, but people who were just enormously tall, and sometimes had anomalous bone structure. Like one of the big things was what they call double dentition. They had 2 rows of teeth, so they have these enormous people, and there's thousands of these. Okay, so like you go online, and the first thing you find is a bunch of hoax pictures. If you look this up, the second thing you find is a bunch of scriptards saying that it's all. What did Kyle call it? You said it was a a newspaper hoax fad, right? That's what they claim it was. This is a big hoax fad, right? It's a fad of hoaxes.
Chupacabra.
Yeah. So, but it's really, there are thousands of cases, and it's not so much newspapers as they are buried in small town libraries and in their records of it back. So starting in the sort of early 1800s, going all the way up to even 1950, people all over the United States were sort of digging in mounds and other things like that, and other places, finding caves, whatever, and finding these enormous skeletons. Okay, sometimes they fell apart, like you were talking about, just crumbled in dust as soon as they were exposed to air. But even the Smithsonian, they have this thing called the and I read it. It's called the 12th Annual Report to the Bureau of Ethnology. Okay, to the Smithsonian Institution, and it was basically the Smithsonian had its own archaeologists that went out all over the United States and were digging in various mounds, or just being present while local people and archaeologists were digging in the mounds, and they're documenting, right? And in that report, which is 400 pages long, has all these reports of enormous skeletons. And what was fascinating to me is that, so they're digging in a classic story is they're digging in a mound, so they've got this very large mound. I've seen some of the pictures, they're huge, right? It's a pyramid. They start at the top, or if there's a break in the mound, they start there, and they sort of layer it down, removing it layer by layer, and then cataloging exactly how everything was laid out and how all the bodies were found. And they get to the bottom where basically they've reached what would have been ground level, right? And they find out that there's still a burial, but this one's subsurface, okay? And they get subsurface and they find out that there's this gigantic stone box, and in the stone box is a single enormous 12-foot skeleton.
Oh, wow.
Okay? And so what it looks like, and this is some of the cases, some of the big people were in the mounds, okay? But in some of these cases, it looks like later native cultures came along and buried all of their elites on top of this one giant.
Wow.
Like they knew he was there, and all of their elites got buried on top of him to be associated somehow with this strange, ancient. Isn't that fascinating? Like I love this whole topic. And then the way it kind of connects to the Native Americans is very interesting, and even up to the point of colonial era. So like pilgrims, if you read William Bradford's, is that his name, Bradford?
The Mayflower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you read his journals, which are you can read them. Some of the native chiefs he was dealing with were 8 or 9 feet tall. They were enormous people, and he talks about this guy is freaking huge, and just like he'd call him a perfect specimen of humanity, just like this enormous, perfectly sculpted, square-jawed, chiseled dude. Looks like a Greek sculpture, basically. Real friendly though, deal with them and stuff. There's something interesting there, something very interesting about that. I mean, you don't have to.
I know down on the Pecos River, West Texas.
Yeah.
Those people were very tiny.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. There's also the very, very small people.
Yeah. I mean, they were little tiny guys, and it's there's a cave. I think I might have told y'all in the last podcast. It's called Cave of Many Hands, and a friend of mine.
Familiar.
Yeah, a friend of mine. They own that property, and their house is on top of it.
Of course.
Yeah, their river house. So you go down below, and you can see these tiny handprints. So it makes me wonder if it was kids,
right, or were they full grown?
Were they full grown adults?
I
mean, it's pretty cool. So you never know.
Yeah, I'd be interested because there is a way to tell. Like if somebody, there is a way to tell because a child's hand will not. There will be certain indications from a handprint,
proportions,
whether the proportions are childlike or if they're fully adult. Even depending on the size, doesn't matter. It's the proportions to the joints. So I'd be interested to find out because there is a way to tell. Is that a kid's hand or is it a fully?
I can take y'all to that.
Is it?
Next time y'all are out there, I can take y'all there.
Yeah.
Assemble the snake force. That's right.
Yeah.
Man. So another thing. We had a friend whose family at one point owned a lot of land near Big Bend. Okay, so it wasn't in Big Bend, but it was off to the side of it, sort of. And they had caves there, and she said the same thing, that A&M came out when she was a little girl, and they did digs there, and the people that lived in that cave were very small. She said they were childlike, but they were fully grown.
Right.
And it's hard to find this in modern literature about this topic, right? You can find it in popular literature, people talking about, small people or giants. But in the academic literature, there's not really a whole lot of, and that's strange to me. But at the same time, pygmies, it was the name for 19th century, the explorers called them pygmies. They were just very small people who were fully adult. Sometimes 3 or 4 feet tall, and that's it. But
it's interesting that you say that because there's also another painting there in Comstock.
Yeah.
On this ranch that I've been to, and I've seen it a million times because I used to hunt out there and trap out there and work for these people. But there's all these little guys painted on the wall, and there's probably 13 of them, and some of them have their hands up. And as it goes on, it shows there's a catfish, and there's a rabbit, and there's a painted deer, just all decorated up of some sort. It almost looks like a llama looking thing. And then I can take y'all to that too.
Yeah.
But it's and then at the very end, there's this big tall guy.
Oh wow.
And he has kind of this halo looking thing over him. So it's almost like, and some of these little guys that are up there with their hands up in the air, like, hold them up, pick them up, they've got arrows in their sides.
Oh, wow.
So it's like the bigger guy come in and took, bullied them or whatever and shot them up,
Wow.
Okay, so there's a, what is the name of this cave? It's in, I think it's in Arizona or something. Lovelock Cave.
Lovelock.
I don't know where it is. Lovelock Cave.
Check it out.
Watcher. I think it's in Arizona, but
Watcher. See if you can find where Lovelock Cave is.
It's basically this old
Rockwall is in the Caddo.
Yeah, that's what he was. Watcher was also pointing out the rock wall might be in the area of the Caddo culture.
Rockwall, Texas.
Yes.
Yes, that's absolute right in smack dab in the middle of it.
Oh man. So the mound builders obviously built the rock wall.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. All right, mystery solved.
Mystery solved. Lovelock, Nevada.
Nevada. Okay. So there's this. You can see the remnants of a lake there. The water line of a lake bed that's now dry, and above that water line is this big cave, and inside that cave supposedly were found. I think David Hatcher Childress did a documentary on this. That there were supposedly these red-headed giants that were found sort of like half mummified in there.
Yeah.
And there were, I think the story goes that these guys went there to get bat guano.
Yeah, they were mining guano.
They were mining the guano, and as they got down to the bottom of this guano mound, they started finding pottery and artifacts, and then they started finding duck decoys carved out of wood and everything.
Oh wow!
And then they get down and they find these skeletons, and they're all huge, like 8-9 feet tall or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact sizes.
Yeah.
But sometime later, I don't know who found this out, but the local sort of Native American tribes that lived in the area had legends of these red-headed giants that had basically terrorized their tribe in the area for a long time. And there was a story where they had run, they finally banded together and they ran them into this cave, and then they burned them out. They
set a huge fire
at the entrance of the cave. So,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's an old myth, right?
It just reminds me of like you got this image on the wall of these little people, and there's this one big guy, and they're all
full of arrows.
That's sort of idea is repeated in legend. That the giants were.
Some of them were terrorizing,
right?
And they were supposedly cannibalistic and whatever.
Yeah. But you know what? Whenever you kill everyone of another group, you always say that they were eating babies. That's just what you do.
Right. Here's something for y'all to research, and this is my belief, and I cannot remember exactly how it came about, but the Vikings.
Yeah.
Okay. Those guys were overseas.
Yeah.
I personally think, this is my belief,
I know where you're going, yeah.
that Vikings come into Neanderthals, come into Paleo.
Yeah.
Because the Vikings could have been before, or maybe Paleo. I don't know how, but
Yeah.
there's some relation there to me
Yeah.
of the Vikings before the Paleo.
Oh, wow. Before them.
Before.
Wow.
That's what I'm thinking. Now, I may be wrong.
Or maybe at least a culture that was seafaring that
Exactly.
came from somewhere else and came here.
Yeah,
before
Yeah, Viking style. Yeah. I totally. So, should we tell the Vermont story?
That's what I was about.
I totally thought of it as soon as you started talking about this. So, like, when we have relatives in Vermont, so we went up there for a wedding, right? And I wanted to take, and we kind of planned this out, but I was at the time I was in touch with a guy who'd done a lot of giant research in the New England area. Jim Vieira, he's kind of famous now. He did the History Channel show, Lost Giants in North America. So he wrote a book and everything. He's kind of famous. But I used to talk to him on Facebook. And I sent him a message. I was like, hey, dude, I'm in Vermont. I'm in this area. Where are the freaking Giants at, bro? Like, where are the colonial root cellars I can go look at? And he gave us the name of Smith Farm. He was like, well, I heard this is in this area. You guys should go check it out. So we did that. And it was awesome. But the other thing that we had kind of gotten wind of was that there might have been a megalithic structure, or a standing stone.
Yeah, so our uncle had friends, and when we started talking to him about this, like, hey, let's go to Smith Farm, let's do this thing. We filled him in on everything we were kind of interested in, and he had a memory of a buddy of his that said there was some kind of standing stone on this hill, on this mountain somewhere. So he got in touch with his buddy, and he's like, oh, yeah, it's over on this road or whatever.
Yeah, way back down this road, yeah.
So we're like, yeah, let's go. We drove out there. It was probably an hour drive.
Yeah.
And we're getting way up in the hills following his buddy's directions. And we think at some point, like, okay, maybe we're lost because it's now a one-lane dirt road, and we're just like,
And it's like deep Vermont woods, like all the trees are enormous.
Yeah. And we pull up, and there's this little cabin, and there are these people in a minivan, and they're unpacking some stuff. They just pulled up, and we're pulling up next to them, so we roll down the window to see. Maybe we'll find out if they know anything about it.
Yeah.
And my uncle asked him, like, hey, we're looking for this standing stone, supposedly up on a mountain nearby here somewhere. He's like, oh, I don't know anything about that, but there's a cave up there that the Vikings built.
Nice. And we're like, yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Nice.
There's a cave back there that the Vikings built.
So he gives us this crazy way of how we can go get to it. Well, the old man owns a property up there, and he don't like nobody walking it, but if you keep driving, you'll see a creek, and then if you stay to the left of that creek and hike this far and get up to the top of the mountain, you can find it there. We're just like, dude,
okay,
we couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
So we'll have to follow up on that, but later it was like it struck us later. It's like a cave that was built. Which is exactly like what Jim Vieira had done. Like a lot of his research was what they called colonial root cellars, and he was a stonemason. Jim Vieira is,
right?
And he's going to these things, and they're megalithic. There's these massive stones, and they're constructed. They're dry laid,
no mortar.
And so he's like, these are not. And they're on the sides of mountains and
where no one ever built a house, right? They're not root cellars from colonialists,
and they're aligned to the solstices and the equinox, and just they have all these alignment properties, astronomical properties. So
where like you go in, there's like an entryway sort of tunnel, right? So when you're looking at the thing, it doesn't look like much because most of it's underground, but you just see this sort of like two big stones, and then there's this enormous lintel stone going across the top, like giant, like
and then it just looks like a hill.
And then it's just a hill. But you go down in there, and there's this long, narrow entryway, and in the back there's a sort of a room. And if you're in there at the right time, either for a solstice sunrise or something like that, the sun will shine directly down that passageway and light up the back wall, which sometimes has carvings on it that you can only see during that period if you don't have a flashlight.
And they would put, like in some of them, they would put these massive quartz crystal stones in particular places. Like one of them had a little chink in the wall up here, like this tiny little hole that was open to the outside area in the roof. So the entryway was aligned to one thing, And then on another, like say it was aligned to the solstice, but then on the equinox sunset or something, the sun would come shine down through that hole and hit this quartz crystal that was, there's this little tiny antechamber on the inside, and the crystal would just light up.
Light up. Like, okay, these are not root cells.
Yeah. They're not colonial root cells. Like, this is probably the...
This is your way home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, warm.
On this day,
That's
you
right.
can find a house right here.
Right. Light of Venus comes through, turns on that quartz thing, and wow, teleported you guys.
It's just funny that they thought it was the Vikings. Right, these guys that had lived there,
yeah,
probably all their lives or whatever, had been told it was the Vikings that built this cave.
Wow.
So, and I think I brought this up. I can't remember. There's this place in Canada. It's like Providence, or I can't remember what the name of it is, but where all these petroglyphs are carved into the granite stone on the floor, on the ground, and deep beneath there are these massive cracks in the granite mountaintop that go down, and there's actually a river underground, way underground.
Oh,
it's
wow.
flowing, and so you can hear it. They call it like the natives had called it like the it was something about the crossover lands, or they thought it was voices, like the land
Whispers.
of voices, the whispers.
Oh, wow.
Of the
You can
dead.
kind of imagine that, like water way down there going
through
Yeah.
these cracks in the rock, right? So there's
If you went
all
up there
these
and took lots of
petroglyphs.
peyote and sort of hung out at night, you would hear talking.
Exactly. There's all these petroglyphs all over the place, but then there are some areas where there are these carvings that look like, an alphabet that some people claim are it's just Viking writing, or a rune,
Runes,
like the
right.
runes that they used.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, and no one, we don't really have a way to date that stuff,
Yeah.
other than sort of by context, and we don't really know.
I'll have to remember what that. Somebody was telling me some stuff.
Provincial
and it
part in Ontario.
It made very good sense to me. I thought, the Vikings, because those guys, they were brutal.
Yeah.
And, I think they started the flint knapping,
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, one thing that is always...
And they had their little horns on their head and all that good stuff, whatever they did.
Yeah.
The Indians probably copied, or they were part of the Indian culture going into the paleo, and the guys coming across from Siberia, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yep. Well, there's like what I said last time you were here, we like the idea of diffusionism, that cultures sort of bump into each other and get idea, and then the ideas exchange, and sometimes blood exchanges, war, but sometimes they, and then like somebody else is really pissing everybody off, so then they'll marry a bunch of girls back and forth, and they'll team up and fight those guys, so there's diffusionism. Ideas diffuse outwards from various cultures where they meet at the edges. Yeah. So I totally agree with that. And there's quite a bit of evidence that like the later sort of 13th, 12th century Vikings, those guys got like actually, because they colonized Greenland. We know this, right?
Right.
They colonized the coast of Greenland and were growing crops there. They had colonies there, and then like the little ice age hit and wiped them out. Okay, but if they made it to Greenland and they made it to parts of Canada, okay, then there's no reason to believe that they didn't also come all the way down into what we now call the continental United States, right? And there are, this is controversial, but there are like basically trails of artifacts, okay, that just go inland from the coast, from the East Coast inland. And it looks kind of like, if you look at the idea of the way the artifacts are sort of placed, and then there's a sort of a stone that was controversial that like looked like it was carved with the Viking writing that said like, we made it here and died, basically.
Right.
So there's this like trail of artifacts, like they fought all the way into where they got and died, and they're, they were badass fighters. But they just like carved their way through all the cultures, but it also implies that the place was very high, like massively inhabited at the time they were here. Like it wasn't much later when the actual like European colonists started showing up later on, and they just found empty forests a lot of times. There were still tribes, but sometimes and I know we need to take a break, but sometimes the tribes would come up and be like, hey, this whole area, well, you guys can live here if you want, but we just want to let you know this area is cursed. There were a lot of people who lived here and they all died. So we don't come here.
Right.
You can live here if you want. I'm leaving.
Right.
Right.
Out of here.
Yeah. So like, there's a lot of, especially with all the mounds, like, what's the city called?
Cahokia.
Enormous city, massive.
Illinois.
Yeah, massive place that they were estimated held 250 to 300,000 people. Like, okay, so they have metropolitan areas basically, right? And so the Vikings show up and the place is massively inhabited, and they're just like, and they hack their way all the way, through 3 basically states and all die out and leave this trail of artifacts and metal, right? And the Indians are fighting them the whole time, and they basically, and then later on, 200 or 300 years later, like plagues have wiped everybody out, and we show up and find empty forests.
But you never know, like, some of them could have met people, like one of these Viking warriors, like, gets wounded and is left behind and then meets some native
Pocahontas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and then quote unquote gets civilized by the natives and becomes part of their culture and teaches them, brings the knowledge that they had, or vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are stories of, like, if you go again, look at the old records of, like, what they called Indians who were blonde hair, blue eyed. And you're like, where did those guys come from? Like light skin, blue eyes, blonde and red hair, and you're just like, all right, those were the wounded Vikings.
Yeah.
That found Pocahontas.
Exactly. I have a quick story real fast.
Okay.
I was living on a ranch out in Valverde County, and my buddy who used to ride bulls with, and we're out there, and we were 50 miles from town, and I like to dig arrowheads. Well, he didn't care nothing about arrowheads. He's the guy, I think I told y'all on the podcast, that was always throwing dirt clods at me or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And
he's the one you left in the cave when you got fleas all over him, maybe.
yeah.
Hey, come a little more forward in the mic. Yeah.
So he said, what are you going to do tonight? He's like, we ain't been to town in a while. And I was like, nah, I want to dig some arrowheads, So
yeah,
went out there and I'm digging arrowheads. He said, all right. And he never dug, so he got down there and he just started digging away. And I was like, what are you doing? I said, you don't even like to dig for arrowheads. He was like, I'm not, you idiot. He's like, we ain't been to town in 2 weeks. He says, I'm looking for Pocahontas. And I said, okay. He said, so that means let's go to the bar, right? And he's like, yeah. So we went to the bar, and yeah, back in the day. He's like,
gonna find himself Pocahontas.
Yeah, he said, I'm trying to find Pocahontas. I've been out here on this ranch for 2 weeks. We ain't been to town in 2 weeks, so.
Oh, man.
And yeah, so then we drove an hour into town, and he found Pocahontas.
All right.
He's got 4 kids later and divorced and lost everything. So, anyways,
maybe you should have kept digging, buddy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, should have stuck with me and dug arrowheads.
That's right. All right, so we need to take a break. Real quick, the Watcher posted Lance Ox Meadows is the confirmed Viking camp in northern Newfoundland, Canada.
Awesome.
So we know they made it that far, and like there are controversial trails of artifacts, like I said, that looks like they fought tooth and nail every step of the way, like a Roman phalanx, just like and just dying one after the other until they made it.
I think somebody learned from somebody.
Yeah.
You
can't help. Yeah. If like they must have been. Who knows the impression they made on the natives? Like they're badass warriors. The natives must have been like, wow, these dudes were awesome.
Oh yeah, let's put a buffalo head on our.
Yeah.
I mean, our modern history is proof that war is one of the main ways we trade technology.
Yeah.
Because when you're losing, you're like, what are they using?
It's kicking our asses. Yeah.
Let's get one of them and see what they've got.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then the last guy carves the rock. We made it to
Did he actually carve into the rock?
Then there's a sword stuck there that everybody has to try to pull out.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break and then we'll come back for the second half.
30
of the show.
seconds of fantastic jams.
And we are back. The Snake Bros Institute for Advanced Arrowhead Studies.
There are no degrees.
The learning never stops.
You just keep on digging.
There are only certificates of ignorance because we don't know anything. So in the break, we kind of we sort of mentioned a little bit the Michigan mines because you were talking about copper. What was the copper thing you brought up?
The Iceman dude.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. So where did this guy get copper? This is Utsi is 5,000 BC. So,
well, wait, what was the story with that? You saw it on
like Nat Geo or something like that several years back. You know, it was the man frozen in ice.
Yeah.
You know, Neanderthal, Viking, whatever he was. You know, Indian, Eskimo, who knows? You know.
Yeah. Yeah, they call him Utsi. He's
where was he?
Yeah.
Where was he found?
He's in the
up in the Bavarian Alps.
Yeah, he's in the Alps, like way up high, and he was like basically he was encased in a glacier that had been, periodically would melt back and then it would reform and then it would melt back and come forward. And then at one point there was a really warm period and it melted back far enough and he was partially exposed. And some hikers went up there and found a piece of him sticking out of the ice. And they notified authorities and they went up there and basically cut a big block of, Encino Man style, cut a big block of ice and pulled him out of it and then basically
gave him coffee.
Yeah, gave him coffee.
He was very well preserved too.
Yeah, he didn't wake up and wheeze the juice, but. God.
What's in the juice? Who's in the juice? No, where's the juice?
But the guy has sort of broken paradigms all over the place. And I forgot about the copper weaponry, but yeah, you're totally right. He also had a head knocker, a big club. Mm-hmm. One kind of that has the ball that sort of pitches forward, and he had all this weaponry all over him. And he was in his, I think they said he was in his late 40s or early 50s, so he was like, and he was just a hard ass, and he apparently decided, for whatever reason, to go up into this pass, and people are making up stories because no one knows what really happened to him, but he was murdered. Okay,
right.
He had been hit in the face. His jaw was broken or something. Parts of his face were broken. He had been hit in the face with another club thing like the one he had. Maybe it was the one that was near him. I don't know. But he was stabbed by something, or he has arrowheads in him, basically he had been stabbed, and he also had a bunch of old injuries that he had survived. So the dude was like a hardcore warrior and hunter, and they assumed that he was up there hunting, or maybe he was running from somebody who had previously, because they think that maybe there was a back, like he got shot in the back with an arrow.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and somebody's like,
November is Scorpio, also known as the sign of the serpent. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
and it spun him around, and he landed with one arm crossed over his face, and like he's still stuck in that position. So you can see the arm, the shoulders bent, arm is going across underneath his jaw, and it's laid out just like he fell. Wham! And he was unconscious, and then he died in the ice. And then there was a storm or something that covered him in snow, and he's just been preserved. And he's 5,000 BC. This is 7,000 years ago.
Yeah,
right.
Which is very close to transitional paleo.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. That's wearing a butt flap only.
Butt flap only, yeah.
Yeah, barefoot butt flap, right?
Yeah.
No, he's fully decked out. Had all kinds of equipment, very, very intricately detailed little pouches and packages all over him.
It's so freaking awesome.
yeah, they were able to actually explore the contents of his stomach, see what his last meal was, which was kind of a greasy. He ate something that was all greasy. He didn't cook it right, or it was gross, and they were thinking like this meal might have slowed him down, and that's why this guy caught up to him or something like that. But somebody stabbed him in the back from really far away, and then got up close and whopped him in the face. Anyway, the other fascinating thing about him that we were talking about, he had tattoos on various parts of his body, joints and things like that were basically meridian marks that's like associated with Eastern magic and acupuncture, right? And so like you have to wonder like, how did this is why we're diffusionists at this podcast. Like he basically had stuff that's associated with like Far East China, like Chinese magic healing stuff, meridians and acupuncture and things that modern medicine doesn't really acknowledge so much, right? But having to do with chi centers and various things of the body. But he had these tattoos over various parts of his body that are the same as these ancient diagrams that Chinese doctors have that show meridian marks, right?
Almost Mongolian type.
Yeah, exactly. And so then when they did X-ray scans of him, they found out that in the places where those marks were, he had arthritis or had old injuries, right? So somebody was putting these there for whatever reason, magical cures, So I don't know. That's very fascinating. But the topic of the copper weaponry, you're like, where did this copper come from, right? So this is a topic we've gone through on the show before about, okay, so in Michigan, there are humongous copper mines that are ancient. We found them when we got here. The Europeans did, okay? Right. And what was it? Something like 500 million cubic feet of material were moved out of these mines in ancient period.
Wow.
A lot of material. And the copper is the best in the world. Like, still to this day, the copper purity, in terms of purity, and it's not on the surface. These aren't little, like, nuggets or whatever. They're buried in granite, okay? Right. So these ancient people, whoever they were, mined these enormous tunnels down into granite somehow, and then got the copper out of it, and were turning it into these gigantic sort of bat-wing-shaped ingots, and then doing something with them. There's not nearly enough copper in the Americas to account for all the copper. Yeah, so here we go. Okay, it estimated that 500 million pounds of copper were mined in tens of thousands of pits on the Isle Royale and the Kaniwa Peninsula of Michigan by ancient miners.
Wow.
So another thing is like that we found out is that when the colonial or the settlers got there or whatever, they found thousands of tools, thousands and thousands of hammers all over the place. Like, and that I was reading this report and we read it on the podcast where this guy, this archaeologist at the time was writing this stuff, and he said that these tools for these ancient people, whoever they were, and this is not archaic stuff. This is like very, very old. No one knows who did it. The natives that we found here did not have copper stuff, or they did, but they were little, very precious, trade things or whatever. They didn't have it. They didn't have
associated with surface copper.
Right.
Because copper is one of the few metals that will actually you can find it on the surface in its pure state on the surface.
Yeah, like gold.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be smelted to get it. It can appear like fully formed on the surface.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Unlike most metal, like iron is in an ore, and you have to kind of smelt it. Like aluminum is a powdery whatever. So
silver.
Silver, all this stuff. But like gold, copper, you can find in like nuggets. Copper will corrode. Gold won't.
There's a lot of copper mines out in West Texas, Big Bend.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Have you ever been driving like through Lajitas, Terlingua, all that area?
Yeah.
And if you see those, I call it the Badlands.
Yeah.
But those hills, and if you ever see green tint.
Yeah, the green tint, it's copper residue.
Copper.
Yeah, exactly.
Copper residue. And
Mr. Pocket, I'm gonna get you, Mr. Pocket.
Right. What? What's that?
Sorry. I just watched these badass series of short little spaghetti western movies that were just recently made. They're on Netflix. I can't even remember what they're called. But one of them is a guy he's walking along a riverbed and he just does these little potholes. And then he takes the dirt in the pothole and he goes into the creek and he pans it and he sees a little fleck of gold and he goes, 1. And then he walks a little further upstream, does another one. None. Let's go the other direction. So he goes the other way. 3. He does it again.
Yeah.
7.
7.
And then he goes until it goes back down to 0.
And then
he starts triangulating.
He's ranging.
Yeah. And he goes to sleep that night and he's looking up at the hill and he goes, "I'm gonna find you, Mr. Pocket."
The pocket of gold?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. All right. Cool.
Sorry, a little side story there. But it was
That's
awesome.
totally fine. This is Tangent Cube.
Great friggin'. I wish I knew what it was called. Brett.
Brett, what is this
Watcher.
called?
Netflix Western movies. Recent.
So the natives here did have copper artifacts, but not 500 million pounds, right?
No way.
Yeah, and that's just a copper.
Yeah.
Like
Who knows what else they're getting?
They
out
had,
there,
No, but I mean, the amount of stone that they removed from these holes
Yeah.
is unbelievable. I think Jim Vieira said like it would take like 10,000 guys 1,000 years to remove all like with the methods that they
think that these people had. Yeah, basically butt flapper methods. But so this, like I was saying, this archaeologist who was looking at this and making a report on the tools, not the mines themselves, but the tools that were being found. Okay, the hammers, the chisels, the other stuff, and some tools that are not understood. Nobody really knows what they're for. But they found wagon loads of hammerheads. I mean, like they were saying, they brought 10 wagons of hammers out of this area. Okay, that were then reused by the settlers because they were metal. Okay, he said that the quality of the tool the various metal tools that they had were just as good as modern day blacksmiths could make at the time. So this is like, 18 to 1900s period. So whoever these very, very ancient people were had metallurgy and metalworking skill that matched Western civilization metalworking at that period.
Here's an interesting fact. Talking about copper.
Yeah.
When people nap arrowheads to date, modern arrowheads, they use a copper napper.
That's right.
And that's how when you go to artifact show, if you see some just killer point, and whomever is in this disbelief that before they buy it, they have it authenticated. So they take it to a authenticator, and
you can check for copper residue on it.
Check for copper residue on it. So maybe
there are some with actual copper residue on them.
Maybe.
Wow.
Just kind of a Native Americans had some copper and said, "Hey, you know what? This works pretty good. Better than deer antler because we can't find any deer out here because we're on the frozen tundra."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
Let's take a hammer from the 1 billion pounds of
a billion pounds of copper. Yeah. So the other thing is that there's this idea that somebody in ancient times knew how to harden copper like we still can't do it now. And I see this in all these. I read, I go and I'm reading these various things where people were talking about ancient finds, and sometimes it's associated with the giants in the mounds. They find these copper artifacts that shouldn't still be. They should have completely corroded to nothing.
Right.
And yet they're still there. And not only that, but they're hard, like very, very hard. Like somebody had a way of hardening copper that it has been lost. Some metallurgical science that we don't have anymore. So I find all that kind of stuff fascinating. Like who mined 1 billion pounds of copper in Michigan in ancient times? No one associates the Native Americans with metals at all, right?
Absolutely.
So I have to wonder about that. And there's this interesting. We talked about this on the last podcast last week, that there's this interesting site that's all the way down in South America. It's in Peru. It's on the border of Peru and Bolivia. Okay, it's called Tiahuanaco, and it's this massively megalithic ancient site. Like the blocks, there are single pieces of stone that are 440 tons.
Wow.
Okay, and I mean, we're impossible blocks is what we call them. No one can move them.
Yeah.
Right?
Blocks.
Impossible blocks, right? And yet somebody built an entire enormous quote unquote city. It's not really a city. It's some kind of. There was a big port. There's the lake. There's a bit. First of all, it's at 11,000 feet above sea level. You can barely breathe there. No crops will grow there, right?
Yeah.
Anything. If you try to grow potatoes or corn, they're all stunted and small. You can't really, right? And yet there's this humongous facility. Is the only way to call it. And it had like this a huge port that there's a big lake, right? And there was this big port there, and nearby, in the mountains nearby, is the only known source of tin in the entire Americas. And tin is the other component, besides copper, that you need to make bronze.
Ah.
Right? So, and like you said, a lot of these huge blocks and other blocks in this destroyed megalithic facility are stained green. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's, we have this idea. We've kind of been throwing this around. This idea that they were up here during the summer period. They mined all this copper, loaded it all up on boats, and then when the winter starts hitting, they sail south because on the southern hemisphere it's summer during the winter here, right? So they sail down, and then they get to this place, and then they're combining it with the tin that these other people have been mining out of this tin mountain, and then they're making bronze and then taking it to Europe to have the Bronze Age. What do you think about that?
There you go.
What do you think about that?
I like it. I like it. Throw Pocahontas in the mix. You got a Lincoln on a penny. You know what I mean?
Stand down or die.
Yeah, that's it.
That's awesome.
So, how many do you know? Like, do you know many Indian legends or myths? Do you pay attention to that stuff?
A little bit. When I lived in North Carolina for a short time, and we went up to Cherokee, North Carolina.
Okay.
Which is Cherokee Indian Reservation up there, and it's pretty cool. If you've never been there, go there. But there's a place called Blowing Rock.
Okay.
And supposedly, there was a Indian maiden or something like that went up there, and I don't know. She thought her brave had been killed or something in battle, and I don't know the whole story. You can probably Google it. The watcher can.
Yeah, Google it. Watcher. Blowing Rock.
Yeah, Blowing Rock. And long story short, she jumped off to commit suicide.
Okay.
And the updraft is so high, powerful, that when she jumped off to commit suicide because she thought that he had been killed in battle or something like that, it blew her back up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's several thousand feet.
Wow.
So it's, you have to check it out. Blowing Rock.
And did she later find out that he didn't die?
Yeah, I think so.
I think Spirit brought her back.
Yeah, I think that's what
That's
it was.
really cool.
You know, so, but.
Man, that's a classic story. That's great.
And I think a lot of hang gliders go up there too. Because they go and.
Squirrel suit dudes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Squirrel suit guys.
Base jumpers. Yeah. Wow, that's really cool. Blowing Rock, edge of the cliff, 3,000 feet above Johns River Gorge, where a strong wind upwells. The legend, a despondent Indian brave. Okay, so it was a brave. Torn between his crush on an Indian maiden and his many manly responsibilities, threw himself to certain death off this rocky precipice. That's interesting. That's cool.
That doesn't sound right.
Doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
It's not the right story.
No, I think that's probably right. I just wanted a happy ending.
Well,
I wanted to go back to this idea of the Caddo culture, the mound builders, and their, like, where we sort of put them, you know, the position we put them in geographically in the United States right now. Like, you were talking about how just north of Austin they go up, and we've got all the mounds and all the stuff. In the Northeast, there's the what do we call them? The root cellars that we were talking about.
Colonial root cellars, yeah.
Colonial root cellars, and then the mounds to the east. But once you get over here into Texas, that all kind of disappears, right? But if you keep going south, you get into Mexico, and you've got pyramids and all this.
Oh yeah, you've got all your Aztec and Maya and all of that stuff, you know.
Right. So we're not totally convinced that all of these structures in the South, in Mexico, in Central America, are properly. I don't know what you would call it. They're sort of given, contextualized. They're given to these certain cultures or whatever that are assumed to be however old they are. But it's a lot like in Giza, in Egypt, where because there was a culture there later that carved a bunch of stuff and built a bunch of stuff, they assumed that the pyramids that they can't really date were part of that culture. So the idea to me is that we know right around 12,000 years ago, 13,000 years ago, was the end of the Younger Dryas period. So there was some massive cataclysm that killed all the mammoths, wiped out the paleo culture, brought the end of the last ice age, basically.
Right.
All right, hold on. So he did find that's the rest of the story. I'm gonna just want to go back. To this. Yeah. It's an immense cliff. Blah blah blah. Okay, so the phenomenon is so called because the rocky walls of the gorge form a flume through which the northwest wind sweeps with such force that it returns light objects cast over the void. The grief-stricken maiden prayed daily to the Great Spirit until one evening, with a reddening sky, a gust of wind blew her lover back onto the rock and into her arms. From that day, a perpetual wind is blown up onto the rock from the valley below. For people of other days, this was explanation enough for the blowing rock's mysterious winds, causing even the snow to fall upside down. That's...
All right.
See, you got it right.
I was right. I do have a good joke about that, but
You got your genders mixed up, but that's
don't tell
okay.
that joke.
That's pretty modern of you.
Yeah, very modern of you to get the gender swapped, buddy.
exactly.
All right, so back to what you were talking about. Sorry.
Oh, and the other thing is, the spaghetti westerns I was talking about are called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
All right, cool.
And it's just a set of like 6 or 7 short films that are Western, and they're great. You should
I'll have to watch those.
Yeah, check them out. They're great. On Netflix. Anyway, so what I'm getting at, and we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but the end of the last ice age, whatever it is that wiped out the mammoths, wiped out all the megafauna from that period that were living here, that the paleo culture, the paleo Indians dealt with, you know, and also wiped out them, was basically a cataclysm serious enough to wipe out a lot of the landscape.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you look at the United States, you can see on the eastern coast there's all the mountains and everything, and then you get into the central United States and you have the Dust Bowl, just this big massive flat desert area with, in a lot of places, just these granite towers that are left, and everything is eroded around them. So something just came through and wiped out that area.
Water.
And then you get further west and you go back up into the Rockies, and then, you know, it's all mountainous and ancient forests and all that kind of stuff. But back then in the north, we know that the Laurentide ice sheet, or there's a couple of them, I guess.
Yeah, the Cordilleran, which was on the west coast, and then the massive Laurentide, which covered almost everything. The Cordilleran was a tiny little thing over here, and the Laurentide was this enormous thing that went basically all the way across Canada and down into the United States. Yeah.
So the Great Lakes were basically
underneath it.
It
was 2 miles thick.
2 miles
2 miles
ice.
thick.
Like if you were in New York on Manhattan Island, you're standing on the surface on Manhattan Island, you have to go straight up 2 miles before you were on top of the ice that used to be there. During the Ice Age. While the Clovis people were here, this was present. You know. So go ahead.
So my idea is that the idea that I have based on all of this is that since we're finding, you know, paleo artifacts here in the county that we live in, however, their mound building culture is further north and east of us.
Right.
That it probably was also here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it was.
It was wiped out by whatever that
eroded all these hills.
Yeah. The cataclysm that melted that ice sheet and all that water flow that created the Dust Bowl,
The Grand Canyon. Yeah.
Right.
all of that stuff. So basically, we have this massive swath of the interior, or like the central United States, that's just been, the slate's been basically wiped clean, and the remnants that we're finding are either more deeply buried or were after that cataclysm ended, and the tiny remnants of the culture that still survived it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have found Caddoan points, artifacts, pottery in Tarpley, Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's right near us.
Yeah, and I have found basically a mod, but they're calling it a Guerrero.
Okay.
Dr. Hester,
Yeah.
Thomas Hester, which is very knowledgeable. I mean, one of the best archaeologists there is.
Yeah.
they're calling it Guerrero, which is or a mission point, which is the last of the Spanish and the Indians. But I found them in Tarpley, but I found a gazillion of them growing up in East Texas.
Oh.
So to me, they're a cattle in point.
Right. So you're like, I see this cattle point that I found in East Texas where it's accepted that the cattle were. But you find one in Tarpley where they, according to standard model archaeology, they can't be. But you're like, this is exactly the same thing. So they're calling it something else because it can't be that. Yeah.
Did they trade it? Did they? Yeah. Were they actually here?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think your theory. I think they were all mound builders at one point in time.
Right. This is why the caves, to me, are so interesting. Like
precious.
Yes, precious. Yeah. Because like, wherever there's bound to be certain geographical areas that might have been, preserved in that cataclysm,
right.
in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we got limestone, so it gets wiped out pretty easy. But so the further east you go, the more you get into the granite, and then But we have Enchanted Rock nearby in Fredericksburg. Do you know anything about that area?
Yeah. Actually, there's gold on the Llano River.
Oh.
Yep. Mr. Pocket. Yeah, Mr. Pocket. That made me think of that when you were saying that.
I'm gonna find you, Mr. Pocket.
I used to live. I had a house there I was living in, and I lived out of town, and I was probably half mile from the river. They call it the Llano Slab. And someone told me there was gold down there, so I'm like looking for Mr. Pocket. So I go down there, and I lived in New Mexico for a while, and I panned a little bit of gold. Didn't find much. I have a really funny story about that. Anyways, long story short, I was so I took my little gold pan down there, and I found a flake or two.
Yeah.
And
One.
this guy comes up. Yeah, 1, 3, 3. Mr. Pocket, I'm gonna find you. So, anyways, this guy comes up. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Panning for gold." He was like, "You're on my claim."
Oh.
And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, "You're funny, right? Llano River, there's no gold here." He was like, "No, I actually have a claim." And he broke out his dredge and a pump system and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, "Wow, cool." I'm like, "Sorry about that." Yeah, can I help? He didn't find much, but I mean, he found enough to keep him happy.
Yeah.
And
that must be fun.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to try.
But yeah, there's a lot of where there's granite, there's gold.
Yeah.
Right.
And also garnets.
Right.
And
garnet. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started looking for garnets.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool. Finding the garnets. Those are like
little spears.
rubies.
Yeah. I've got garnets, uncut garnets that were from Georgia. Little balls of them. Yeah.
You can find them in the Llano River. It's pretty cool how you do it. You just take the gravel and get it wet and then throw it on a glass table, right? And then you separate it out and just spread it all out on a little glass table.
Yeah.
And then when it gets dark, you shine a light underneath.
Genius.
And you can see them shining.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of a fun little deal for the kids and everything.
That is cool.
Yeah. But Enchanted Rock, yes, they say that the Indians called it Enchanted Rock because when the moon would hit it just right or the sun would hit it just right, it glittered. So they thought it was enchanted.
Oh, that's cool. I've also heard that
local legend.
Yeah. There's a local legend also that it was another reason why they called it, because I remember reading that, I think. And I also remember reading that it was also called enchanted because it would moan or creak.
Oh, really?
So so like when there were particular periods when the sun was coming down and it was sort of a warm day and then it got cold real fast, the rock would be like, make these strange noises of cooling or something,
Right.
But it was sort of like the place where the water is way down below and you hear whispers, so like the rock would kind of talk. And like there's actually there are rare reports in the park now because the park says if you hear this, please tell us. And so there are very rare reports where people actually hear the phenomenon of the rock making these very strange. They can't. So far, I haven't been able to find a recording of it, but everyone who's what I was reading, everyone who has heard it has described that it's almost impossible to describe the sound. That it sounds like no animal or nothing else that they've ever heard, and it's very eerie.
Wow.
And it happens after dark, right? So you got this gigantic dark shadow thing, and it starts going, you know,
Kind of
whatever,
like a
making
tin roof creaking after a hot day in the summer.
And there's that whole, there's the fissure going through the whole thing, so you can imagine that there are parts of it rubbing, whatever, you know. Who knows?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's like the Chisos Mountains out in Big Bend.
Yeah.
You know why they call them Chisos Mountains?
No, I don't. What?
Because of the lightning storms up there during the summertime.
Yeah.
And it may not even rain, but there's lightning because of the altitude.
Oh.
And so the Indians would see it from a distance at night. And Chisos supposedly means ghost in Indians. So they're the Ghost Mountains.
Ghost Mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they might see St. Elmo's fire on them too, because I know big granite spires and massive electrical storms, the granite will sometimes get the St. Elmo's fire.
Right.
That like ship masts used to get, where it looks like a flame dancing on top of the mast.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Martha Lights.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe. Those
Yeah.
could be really ghosts. Don't.
Yeah. I've seen them a million times.
Oh, you have?
Oh,
we
yeah.
want to get out there to see them. I have never seen them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go right at the right time.
Yeah.
And
Is it the right time of day or the right time of year?
right time of night.
Okay.
Yeah. I can take y'all out there and show you.
Oh man, I would love to see the Martha Lights. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I actually saw one time. It came at me and then split in three.
Oh.
And then went boop, boop,
Wow.
and then went
Like back into a single.
Yeah. I'm like, whoa, I need to quit drinking beer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you didn't chase out in the desert, try to get them?
Nah, they're like 180 miles out.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
So
maybe.
you know where to go. You just go post up, sit on your tailgate, and
Yeah, they actually have a
They have a whole
parking
area. Yeah. It's just.
And how frequent is it?
I've seen them every time I drive. Like when I'm guiding hunts out in Van Horn, if I'm driving at night, I'll always slow down. I can see them dancing around up there. If you know what you're looking for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got.
And there's so much skirp derping.
Oh,
People
yeah.
try to claim, oh, it's cars driving on the distance. You're like, dude, these have been reported for hundreds of years. Way before cars, buddy.
Yeah.
Before there were trains, you know.
Exactly.
Oh, then it was torches. Oh, come on.
Yeah. Oh, then it's a bunch of illegals trying to cross over. They're not splitting their light. They don't want to
Yeah.
be seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is a little bit off topic, but I did want to try to remember to say this. Like we're talking about connections. You're talking about Viking connections, possibly. We're talking about. I think the last time we talked about this, you were saying that there's a sort of newish idea that maybe the Clovis people went that way instead of coming here.
Right.
Because they found like very, very old Clovis sites, 15,000 years on the East Coast, right? So the idea that they actually were here and went,
That way.
yeah, exactly. That they
Which could have
crossed,
turned into the Vikings.
and then they turned into the Vikings. There you go.
Yeah.
Neanderthals.
So one of the fascinating things that I've been looking at recently are some of the connect. So he's talking about got this place in Mexico City, the pyramids, right? And then there's the mound builders up here, and there's just a whole bunch of unexplained stuff. And then the pyramids are just all over the world. Like people are building giant triangles all over the world,
Right.
But I was looking at some of the names of these places, and it struck me like, okay, so an ancient Egyptian wisdom god. He wasn't really a god, but like lowercase g god, right? His name is spelled Thoth. Thoth is how people say it, or Thoth, but it's actually pronounced properly pronounced Tehoti, right? And I'm like looking at the name of that gigantic pyramid, like the Pyramid of the Sun, everything in Mexico City. It's called Teotihuacan.
Yeah.
It's like named after this Egyptian guy.
Wow.
Teotihuacan is how they say
It's
it.
yeah, Teotihuacan, and his name is Teoti. It's very close to the same thing. It's almost like city of this guy, right? And he is credited with the building of the Great Pyramids in Egypt.
Wow.
Okay, and then you've got these gigantic truncated pyramids in Mexico, and that whole area is called Teotihuacan. And I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And there's another idea that he is also so he's connected to other. There's this weird thing with ancient gods that you go to different cultures and they have different names, right? Sometimes they're the same name, just said differently in a different language. But there's another ancient Middle Eastern person, sort of mythical, Enoch. Okay, Enoch is his name, and he is like associated with Hermes Trismegistus, who is like the god Hermes was the wisdom god of the Greeks, right?
Right.
So like we use the word hermetic now in science to mean something sealed perfectly. It's a hermetically sealed, so it carries up to even to this day. Like Hermes was the god of knowledge. He's part of the reason why the podcast is named Brothers with the Serpent. Like, you know how a medical symbol has the snakes twined up the staff?
Yeah.
That's the symbol of Hermes Trismegistus, right?
Okay.
The serpents are the symbol of knowledge, and also they kind of look like DNA,
Right.
right? But Enoch and Hermes and Tehodi are all associated, and maybe the same person. They're associated with having been given knowledge from the gods, the Watchers. This is where we call our friend Brett the Watcher, right? The Watchers or the Nephilim, the sky gods, were giving knowledge to Tehodi or to Hermes or to Enoch, okay? And then there's another place, I can't remember if it's in Mexico, but it's called Tenochtitlan. And Enoch is in the name. T-E-N-O-C-H. T-I-T-L-A-N. And I'm just like, okay. That's interesting to me,
There's
you know?
a connection there somewhere.
Yeah. And then so like down in the Peru area where I was just talking about where they have these gigantic megalithic blocks and they were probably doing something with copper because the rocks are all stained green. In that area where that lake is, there's this enormous lake up there at that 11,000 feet level. The natives there build reed boats that are exactly the same as the ancient reed boats that the Egyptians used to build. I mean, they're exactly the same. The style, you know, they weren't papyrus reeds or whatever the Egyptians were using, but they have an analog of that there, and they do the same thing. And like Graham Hancock, an author who studied a bunch of this stuff, went and got to watch one of the old guys making one of these boats. And they would get these reeds and they'd bundle them together and then tie them incredibly tightly, and then bind them all together to make these like sort of reed boats
looking type thing.
And it's just exactly like the ones that the ancient Egyptians made. So there's these connections that go across the world that connect like ancient Egypt's pyramid building culture with ancient cultures here that were also building pyramids using enormous blocks. And
I think they're all connected.
Yeah,
my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah. That's kind of where we're at too. Like the whole idea that the mound builders here, or like whoever built, like these mounds, even they're burial mounds or whatever, but they're truncated pyramids.
Yeah,
like so many of them. They have square sides and then they're cut off on the top. The root cellars that we were talking about.
Root cellars.
The colonial root cellars.
The colonial root cellars.
The stonemasonry in there is so similar to the dry laid stonemasonry everywhere else. And it just, like, to me, it seems like, we have this fairly recent, geologically speaking, time period of this cataclysm that happened mainly here.
Yeah.
Right?
This was the epicenter where North America was.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have this big, massive blank spot in the middle of the United States, but we have all, like, right after that happened, we have the best, most beautifully made artistic stone artifacts, the paleo artifacts, with all of their meticulous flaking and everything that we were talking about. That's just perfect. And then from there, there's just this, what was Cody Tripp say? There's just like this.
Oh, yeah. When I talked to Cody today, he was talking about how there's this huge gap between late Paleo and early Archaic. He's like, there's just this big gap, and there's nothing there. And then the early Archaic stuff is not very good compared to the Paleo stuff. Like the Paleo artifacts are just freaking phenomenally gorgeous. And then you get into early Archaic, and they're kind of like, like these people were sort of struggling. Yeah. And then the skill builds back up, right? So there's this obvious. Not obvious, but there's an indication there, some kind of evidence that there was a loss of a whole bunch of knowledge.
Makes sense.
Because a lot of people died, and then they had to sort of start over almost from scratch, right?
Right. So they're like, okay.
Right. Like they remembered, and there were people that remembered, like, you can make tools by doing this, but they had to refigure it out. They had the basic idea, but there was not the beautiful, just
like
gorgeous.
Going in a coma.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So should we take a break?
No, I was just thinking we should go through.
Okay, cool. So I had this.
Yeah, we totally missed our third break, so we're just gonna push on through.
Yeah,
right on.
So I had this. I was hiking with my dad and Russ. I guess it was the three of us. I think.
Where?
Just at the top. I don't remember. We were talking about this this place here where we live in Madrona Ridge, where we found on my neighbor's
Docs
property.
does.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's all
Whoops. Doc says we found
Archaeologists are gonna be coming for us now.
multiple artifacts, right? And now there's no live water here. Now occasionally, there's seasonal creeks and springs that will pop up. And in this one area, we had found, I found some midden rock in this area, and it was very just. It looked like it had been washing down, and then there was a natural ledge of limestone, so you could see the midden couldn't be that deep because it went straight into limestone, but you could see the midden rock, right? So it was a small camp. So I had kind of constructed this fictional story, right? And listening to the last podcast where you kept referring when we interviewed you, you kept referring to the material.
Yeah.
The quality of the arrowhead is so
reliant on the quality of the material.
Exactly.
Oh, sure.
And around here we don't find beautiful, awesome flint nodules. Like you break them open and there's, it's just that perfect root beer with no imperfections inside and all that. We don't find that here. It's
Thunderbird
not here.
eggs.
So we were in this conversation. We were kind of just developing this idea of let's say there's this loss of knowledge, right? All throughout the culture around the area, and everybody's kind of going through this period of relearning, reinventing the wheel, so to speak, and they're trying to figure it out. But there's this old man, and his father and his father's father or whatever, they were artisans or whatever. They were badass at it, and they knew the land. So he's passed down to him is this knowledge of where the good material, how to find the good material, where it might be located. What types of geological features you might look for. Yeah. And the other nomadic tribes around know about this old man, but he's too old to move around, and he's got his little cubbyhole up here in the middle of
shaman school.
Yeah, his little shaman school up here with his little family.
Yeah.
With his little family, and they have this one little spring, and they've just got what they need.
Oh, I see.
So these other braves or whatever will travel to him and say, oh, hey, they'll bring him goods, from down at the Medina River, where they've got different types of stuff that he did. So they bring him all this stuff, and they bring him nodules, or he tells them where to go. Like, you need to go up to this place, and you need to look for this at this gorge or whatever, and you'll see this type of stuff in the stone. Yeah. Bring me these things. Yeah. And so they bring him these chunks of flint, and then he breaks them open and makes them these badass points. Like, he's the guy that can freaking make, or he's training them or something like that.
So he's probably training some,
Yeah, because basically the idea was we were thinking about caches, like how you might find this little place that's up high in elevation, far away from the river, but there used to be an old spring there you can see, and there's a little bit of burn rock, and you could dig there, and you might find a cache of 20 just freaking phenomenal points, because that was his deal. He was just the old man up in the hill that could make you the most badass shit.
If you brought him the good material.
And he knew where the good material was, and if you brought him that material, he would just make you So
it was quest style. First you quested to get to the guy, you brought him gifts, and then he gives you another quest to find the material, and you're like, okay, damn it. And then you go do all that, and then you set the fire next to the cliff, and you break off the stuff, and then you bring that stuff back to him, and you give it to him, and then you wait, and then you come back, and then you've got these badass
makes
artifacts.
just a set of just freaking awesome.
Yeah, and whereas no camp is supposed to be theoretical.
Right.
Exactly.
I have a perfect example of that.
All right.
My son lives out on English Crossing, and when I first met his mother, I stayed out there on that ranch and everything, and I looked all over for arrowheads.
Yeah.
They've got a couple of creeks, and I found a couple of camps and stuff like this. But there's one place right by the house that makes no sense. He sent me pictures the other day of a Nolan Point, which is 8,000 years old.
Wow.
Transitional paleo, very close to it. He found Martindale, transitional paleo.
Wow.
Very close to transitional paleo. And then he found a bird point.
Huh.
And I said, where'd you find all this at? He's right here by the house, up on the hill. So I go out there just 2 days ago. Take him home, go out there, and he wanted to show me this place. Well, there is a little bitty midden. I mean, smaller than the circle you and I are sitting in.
Right.
10 by 10 by 10.
10 by 10
Yeah.
by 10.
Yeah. Smaller than that.
4 by 4 by 4.
And there's flint everywhere, but there's bedrock 3 inches down.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, why are these paleo or almost paleo points being found right here? I said, probably because they thought, hey, there was a spring here at some time or another.
Yeah.
Let's camp here. A couple of those guys napped out some arrowheads, and they moved on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that was it, you know? And he's like, well, can I dig here? I said, yeah, you can probably dig there. You're not going to find a lot.
Yeah.
But you may find some killer,
Yeah.
Yes.
like you're talking about, cachet.
Yeah. And
You
the
never
period you're talking about that he found is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Transitional paleo is like just enough time after the cataclysm for them to start doing stuff again, right? Everybody
Yeah.
is like sort of calmed down from trying not to die.
And there's a couple of old guys
Yeah,
who were
who
taught
survived.
well.
Yeah.
Like, so we think about it in modern day terms. Like, if we had some cataclysm that wiped most of us out, here and there, in random places around the country, would be some scientist who had some knowledge and ability to rebuild
yeah.
some
if you could bring in
certain
the
types
materials
of
yeah.
tools and machines that could do certain things if he could get the materials. Exactly. So he would know where those materials might be located, and he could tell this person, that person.
Yeah.
He's not going to tell them how to build it because that's
his
too
deal.
hard.
Yeah.
But they can go and do it. So I thought that was like another story that you told, and I don't know if you told this on the last podcast, but there was a shelter
Yeah.
that you went into that you said was no bigger than the cab of your truck. You were sitting there waiting for a cat or something,
Right.
and you like look down and there's that.
Yeah, perfect arrowhead. I mean, one of the best scalorn points I've ever found.
A what point?
Scalorn or scalorn.
Okay. Like SKLORN? Is that how you...
SCALLORN.
Okay.
Like a bird point though, right?
Yeah, they're an arrow point. We found a bunch of them in Tarpley when I did that dig over there. But they're, I mean, there was no sign
Yeah.
at
No
all.
midden rock, no.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
a couple pieces of maybe burnt rock, but
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, you couldn't say, hey, that's burnt rock. There's
Right.
a
Yeah.
camp here. Had I never seen that arrowhead, I never would have went in there and dug that cave. But once I got into it, digging below, because it was in a creek, I mean, right in the middle of a creek bed. I mean, there was a lot of sediment.
Yeah.
So once I got 6 inches into it, I started seeing burnt rock.
Yep.
So how-
Disguised.
So in the shelter that I made it to up the canyon that we talked about last time, the one where I went off by myself, because you had said, yeah, there's a shelter back there, and then I went off and found one that you said was not what I was supposed to be looking for, but it was the one that was on the point. The canyon splits, and there's one right there,
Right.
up
It's
high on the point,
overlooking the river.
overlooking the river, and then there were two shelters on the sides over here, but I went to the one in the middle. When I got up there, it was like the size of this tangent cube. It was
Right.
like, it was like it was like being inside of a brain of coral. It was just the full of holes, crazy looking. Right in the middle was aoudad stuff and dust, right?
Right.
But right in the middle, I was like, okay, if there was a camp up here, or maybe just it was a scout lookout, because there's not enough room to have you maybe could have a family in there, but it would have been a small campfire, right? So I figured it would have been, there was a spot that was kind of sort of lower than everything else, and I was like, okay. So I started poking around. I didn't have any tools, but I found myself with sharp rock and started, butt flapping my way through the dirt. The sharp rock. And I started to see gray dust.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this is ash. And then I started to see some little burn rock and things that I was associating with burn. And then the dirt started making noise. Like every time I tried to dig in that spot, something down in the dirt would go. I quit because I didn't know what that was.
That sounds like one of those cicada killers.
Yeah, big old insect down there was pissed. And I actually,
or rock rattler.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Whatever it was, it was solid dust, and I was digging through the dust and pulling rocks out or whatever, and then the ground started to buzz, and there was this noise, and it was like, and I was like, okay, I do not want whatever that is to come flying out at me, so I just quit.
I actually have a video of the first shelter we were digging in.
Oh yeah,
the eagle's nest.
Yeah.
And there's this huge wasp just flies in there, and he lands on the dust. We've got this whole thing going over here. There's all these huge, quote unquote, huge animals digging 5-gallon buckets full of stuff, and this wasp just like just digs himself this tunnel like so fast. Just pulling rocks out and just goes back in. I videoed him.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was.
It wasn't fair because he had 6 limbs.
Tarantula hawk or something.
Yeah, tarantula hawk.
Yeah, he had 6. He was standing on 4 legs and with like his front legs like he's just down to the dirt. It's not even fair.
I was like, man,
we need this guy to find arrowheads. Just wait here, he'll pull them out.
Exactly. I've done that by badgers.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was a spot out where we work where.
these 2 armadillo, or well, I
We don't know what they
many.
were, but dug into the
I've
ground.
killed 2 nearby there. But there were 2 armadillo holes into the side, like right by the driveway. There's this massive oak tree, and they dug like through
Cliff
some roots or
goes
whatever.
down to the river. Yeah.
The river's right down there, about 30 feet down in elevation. And what they had thrown out of their hole looked to me like burn rock. Nothing else along that riverbank.
Yeah.
Looked like it.
I've seen it, but
So I went in there and just started tearing into the side of that hill, and sure enough, it's just a freaking
Wall of burn rock.
Wall of burn rock, but
another big maiden.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's
Under the driveway.
It's at least 4 feet down from everything else. Like there's level ground, and then 4 feet down, that's where it starts, and it goes in, and 6 to 8 feet over is the driveway, paved.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah. So we told our boss, we're like, so we need to tear up this whole section of driveway, pull it out of there, dig down. He's like, you're fired.
yeah, exactly. So it's
If you
just.
hit the ground off the ladder, you're fired.
So I'm just waiting one day when that oak falls.
Yeah.
And tears up the driveway. I'm gonna be like, well, we just need to excavate the area. Get
Yeah,
the
we need,
stump out.
we need to make sure we get the base down right. We're just gonna pull all this stuff out of there and
I've found a lot of arrowheads around big oak trees that have fallen.
yeah. I always like to look in the root balls to see what rocks are stuff because no one else has looked there for at least 100 years or how long that oak tree's been growing.
Yep.
You never know what you're gonna find.
That and fire ant mounds. When you
yeah.
get fire ants, when you're hand digging, it's like they're protecting the good one.
Oh man.
So,
That's
I
what
mean,
he's saying.
Yeah,
They're like-
I'll go in there and I'll get all bit up, and, stung and everything else. And sure enough, there's a good one in there.
Yep, that's what we always say. It's like there's some kind of weird juju going on there.
Yeah.
Fire ants are always protecting the best pyramids.
The best pyramids. That's right. All right, I think that's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for having
Fantastic show, man. Go ahead and give you got the email address, phone number.
Yeah,
We'll put it in the show notes too.
Yeah, it's clint.beckham@yahoo.com.
Cool.
clint.beckham. And check us out.
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Hit me up on personal Facebook, or I've got Audad Adventures and more
Yeah.
for the hunting.
Yeah.
I've gained more ranches. Hopefully this new
Secret.
site comes through. Yeah. The secret. Shh, everybody.
Yeah. There you go. Secret.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody, folks.
Bleep, 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 bleep.
Yeah.
We'll know something tomorrow, but yeah, thanks for having me out.
Yeah, man. It's been fantastic.
It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Yep. And this show is history.
Snakes.
All right, that was a kick-ass show with Mr. Clint Beckham.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, that was a great show. But we wanted to come back and remind you guys that you can get a hold of us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com.
And you can go to the website at brothersoftheserpent.com.
That's right. You can comment there. You can...
check out the encyclopedia or the glossary.
That's right. Don't forget our Twitter feed. Brand new. It's still Twitter Noobs. It is at SNKBRS or at Snake Bros with no vowels.
And please share the show if you like it. You can share it on Twitter. That's why we got the Twitter.
That's right. And you can also share it on Facebook, too.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you like the show, if you enjoy what we're doing, you can help us out by donating to our pyramid scheme. Send us $1 and send us straight to pyramids.
Just $1 or 50 cents or
Right.
any amount.
Or $1 million. However much you want. Doesn't matter. It all helps.
And please give us reviews on any platform, whatever you're using.
That's
iTunes,
right.
Stitcher, whatever.
That's right. And you guys have given us great reviews too on iTunes. We have a 5-star rating there, so thank you so much for that. And we love you guys.
Thank you so much for listening.
That's right. Good night, Adamu. Get back to work.
Freedom at last!
What happens in a black hole